Ladies and gentlemen, today we dive into a moment that is echoed throughout history, one that resonates deeply within the themes of betrayal. Through history, through betrayal, greed, and the human capacity to make choices that define the course of our lives. The story of Judas Iscariot and the 30 pieces of silver is not just a tale from ancient times. It's one that speaks to us today about the choices we make, the value we place on things, and the consequences that follow. We all know the story, or at least parts of it. Judas, one of Jesus' disciples, betrays him for 30 pieces of silver. This seemingly small transaction would set in motion a series of events that would lead to the crucifixion of Jesus and the ultimate redemption of humankind. But have you ever wondered what the actual cost of those 30 pieces of silver was? How much would they be worth today? And more importantly, what does this cost say about the nature of betrayal, greed, and the things we value? And to understand the significance of the 30 pieces of silver, we must first consider what they meant at the time of the betrayal. In the ancient world, silver was used as currency, but it wasn't as precious or as rare as gold. It was something that could be used for everyday transactions, a tangible form of wealth, but not something that would make someone incredibly wealthy. The 30 pieces of silver Judas accepted were likely silver shekels, a type of coin that was common in that era. A shekel weighed about 0.2 ounces of silver, so 30 pieces would amount to about 6 ounces of silver in total. And as we've discovered, the etymology of the word shekel is, in fact, silver. Now, Judas didn't just betray Jesus for 30 pieces of random silver. He accepted that in exchange for delivering someone he had once called a friend to those he sought to have him arrested. In doing so, he was putting a price on the life and legacy of a man who, just days before, had washed his feet in an act of humility. And for what? For 6 ounces of silver? The cost of friendship, of trust, of loyalty, of integrity, all for a relatively small amount of wealth. But how small? To understand how much these 30 pieces of silver are worth in today's money, let's break it down. As mentioned, 30 pieces of silver in the ancient world amounted to about 6 ounces. Now, the price of silver fluctuates, but today it's valued at around $32 per ounce. Multiply that times 6 ounces, we arrive at $190. At first glance, this may not seem like much in the grand scheme of things. In fact, $190 is often the price of a single meal for at a nice restaurant, a couple bottles of wine, or a modest gift for a loved one. It's not a fortune, not even close. It's certainly not an amount that would make someone wealthy. Yet this relatively small sum was enough to convince Judas to betray a man who had given him everything. This brings us to the heart of the story. The 30 pieces of silver were not the true cost of Judas's actions. The betrayal he committed wasn't about the money. It was about the values he compromised, the trust he broke, and the impact his choices had on history. $31.90 in today's money may seem insignificant. $190 in today's money might seem insignificant, but the consequences of Judas's decision are immeasurable. While we can quantify the value of silver in today's terms, we can't easily quantify the emotion, spiritual, or social cost of betrayal. Judas's actions, while motivated by greed, were also deeply tied to his internal conflict and the complex dynamics of his relationship with Jesus. Jesus' betrayal marked a turning point in history. It set into motion a series of events that would ultimately lead to Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. That act of betrayal came as a symbol, not of the value of silver, but of the dangers of valuing something material over something much more precious. In today's world, we often find ourselves in situations where we're tempted to make choices that may seem like they're bringing us temporary gain, but a much deeper cost. Maybe it's a job opportunity that requires compromising our values, or a relationship that we let go for selfish reasons. Maybe it's a lure of wealth or success that pushes us to sacrifice integrity, kindness, or love. The story of Judas and 30 pieces of silver reminds us that the true cost of betrayal can never be measured by dollars and cents. The price is often paid in things far more valuable, like love, trust, friendship, and respect. In our world today, the value of material wealth is often placed at the center of our lives. We live in a society that constantly encourages us to accumulate wealth, to gain power, to seek status. But when we look at the story of Judas, we are reminded that these pursuits, if they come at the cost of our principles, our relationships, and our integrity, can leave us empty. So what does this say about the decisions we make today? Judas may have betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, That how often do we compromise our own values, relationships, or beliefs for a temporary reward? How often do we sell out, knowingly or unknowingly, for something that feels important at the moment, but leaves us with great regret later? The story of Judas speaks to a much larger truth, that there is profound difference between the short-term satisfaction of material gain and the lasting fulfillment that comes from making decisions grounded in integrity, love, and respect. The 30 pieces of silver are not just a monetary amount. They symbolize the fleeting nature of things that tempt us and the lasting pain that comes from making decisions we can't undo. So in conclusion, as we reflect on the 30 pieces of silver, it's important to remember that the true value of our choices isn't measured by how much money we can accumulate or power that we can gain. Judas's betrayal, though driven by greed, serves as a reminder of our choices we have as consequences far beyond the immediate payoff. So when we face decisions in our lives, whether it's in our personal relationships, our careers, or interactions with others, let's remember the story of the 30 pieces of silver. Let's remember that there are things in life that money simply can't buy. Things like trust, loyalty, love, and integrity. And when we are tempted by the allure of short-term gain, let's ask ourselves, what is the true cost of my actions? And is it worth it? Honor is the one thing you can give yourself and is the one thing you can take away from yourself. I suggest you value it highly. In the end, the 30 pieces of silver may be only worth $190 today, but the lessons they impart are priceless. Thank you for your time this morning. Knowledge is the key that unlocks all doors. Happy Good Friday. Watch Carolyn Levitt rips. That's a good. Rips for defending woman beater and Salvatorian MS-13 gangster, Abrecho Garcia, and will never be a Maryland father. He will never live in the United States of America ever again. I agree. Sadly, you can read a Bible in prison, but school, perhaps if they read it in school, they wouldn't be in prison. That's a good comment to make.
It is a good comment.
Guess which is it? Is it NBA or NFL? 36 have been accused of spousal abuse. 7 have been arrested for fraud. 19 have been accused of writing bad checks. 117 have directly or indirectly been bankrupted at least 2 businesses. 3 have done time for assault. 71, I repeat, 71 cannot get a credit card due to their bad credit. 14 have been arrested on drug-related charges. 8 have been arrested for shoplifting. 21 currently are defendants in lawsuits, and 84 have been arrested for drunk driving in the last year. How many of you think NBA? How many of you think NFL? Well, the answer is neither. It's the 435 members of the United States Congress.
Trump administration plans to end the IRS direct file program for tax-free filing, Associated Press sources have said. Abolish the IRS. Watch.
This is another win for America. More than 21,000 IRS agents has reportedly accepted President Trump's administration's recent offer to resign, reported by New York Times. Now, I'm going to say, is that all of them? If it's not, keep going, okay? President Trump needs to get rid of the IRS. They have threatened us with jail time if we don't pay. They have threatened to garnish our wages, levy our homes and properties if we don't pay. They have stolen our tax dollars and flushed it through NGOs, spent it like their own bank account while Americans struggle. However much you hate the IRS, let's hope, okay, by this time next year, there is no more IRS and these big corporations are paying the taxes through tariffs. IRS needs to be abolished as of yesterday.
I recently asked my friend's little girl what she wanted to be when she grows up. She said she wanted to be the President of the United States. Both of her parents, liberal Democrats, were standing there. So I asked her, if you were president, what would be the first thing you would do? Well, she replied, I'd give food and houses to all the homeless people. Her parents beamed. Wow, what a worthy goal, I told her. But you don't have to wait until you're president to do that. You see, you can come over to my house right now, and you can mow the lawn, pull weeds, and sweep my driveway, and I'll pay you $50. Then, I'll take you over to the grocery store where that homeless guy hangs out, and you can give him the $50 to use toward food and a new house. She thought that over for a few seconds, then she looked me straight in the eye and asked, Why doesn't the homeless guy come over and do the work and you can just pay him the $50? I said, welcome to the Republican Party. Her parents are still not speaking to me.
Why are the people $30 trillion in debt giving us our credit scores?
Oh, that's a good question. There's another U.S. debt drowning warning. Amid a damaging trade war, a wobbly stock market, and global sell-off of U.S. assets, there's a new warning on the gargantuan debt levels, and political dysfunction could trigger another downgrade in the nation's once bulletproof credit rating. In an April 14th report, S&P Global Ratings hinted that it could lower the U.S. credit rating, currently at AA+, by another notch if another number of things happen to the U.S. fiscal situation to make it worse. It's a good bet some of those things will in fact happen. The outcome of the U.S. government's budget process and policy negotiations over the coming months will help determine the policies that will inform our view of U.S. sovereign creditworthiness, S&P said in the oblique language typical of fiscal credit analysis. These discussions could affect our view of the U.S. fiscal trade profile. S&P was the first agency to cut U.S. credit rating all the way back into 2011 after congressional standoff over raising the nation's borrowing limit almost left the Treasury Department unable to pay its bills. At the time, the total national debt was about $15 trillion, and the portion held by the public amounted to $66 trillion. Here we can watch and take a look at the debt explosion continuing to take off like this in terms of Federal Reserve notes, FRN. In March, Moody's warned about the ballooning cost of financing the government's debt due to the rising interest rates. The U.S. fiscal strength is on course for a continued multi-year decline, the agency had said. S&P has several concerns relating to the policies President Trump and his fellow Republicans are pushing in Congress. In addition to the sheer size of the government debt, the firm cited a budget gimmick where congressional Republicans are considering as part of the big tax cut bill that's underway on Capitol Hill. The gimmick, known as current policy baseline method of accounting, would massively understate the amount that the tax cuts would add to the debt and even allow for deeper tax cuts financing by borrowing that Congress could pull off without the trick.